Hello everyone, welcome to my first Banlist video. Sorry this is coming out a little late. The Banlist has been out for like a week now, I think. But I wanted to make sure all my thoughts on the Banlist were solidified, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not super happy about it. I think this Banlist is like a 4 out of 10, and I will explain why. So this Banlist had some things I liked, and I'll go over those now, so we'll start with the positives. First off, I liked all the Floodgate hits. Droll to 2, Barrier Statue ban, Featherstorm ban are all good. Also, Herald ban. All those, great. A bunch of really annoying, stupid Floodgates that I'm glad are gone or at least getting hit. I would have preferred Droll get limited or banned, but I'll take a semi-limit. It's a step in the right direction. The next thing I have no real opinions on is Habakiri to 1. I didn't think Mitsu needed hit with Herald getting banned, but I don't think it's like a problem either. Mitsu's been good all year. Having this deck get hit is totally fine. And then I like the Draco Tail hits. I think Malulu and Ketu to 1 are both very reasonable and like they feel relevant. They feel like they're hits that mean something. They're not like gonna make Draco Tail significantly worse, but they are going to affect the deck, which, considering this deck was the one getting the most support out of Burst Protocol, I didn't expect them to do a ton to it. I'm happy with what they did. The only thing I would have liked to see that they didn't do is they didn't limit Arthalion. The reason I like limit Arthalion is that I've played against this deck in Genesis, and in that format, they basically have to play Arthalion at 1. And I think it's a really cool mix-up. There is a reason Draco Tail plays 3 Arthalion. It really changes how they play their grind game. It changes how they play their turn 1, because now they can't like make the Arthalion on your opponent's turn unless you somehow shuffle it back on your turn after making it. So you kind of have to decide between turn 1 Arthalion and then the on your opponent's turn Arthalion. This is the one meaningful hit I think they could have given a Draco Tail that still left it a very powerful deck, and they didn't do that, which kind of sucks. I really would have liked to see Arthalion get limited, but I'm still fine and happy with the Draco Tail hits. No problems there. Now on to the negatives. That's kind of it for the positives. First off, for the negatives, the unhits mostly did not matter. And the ways they did matter, I think, are overall not good for the game. And I'll get to those when I get to those. But for now, the hits that don't matter are Black Dragon Clap Serpent to 3, White Dragon Wyverburster to 3, Dark Grepher to 3, Change of Heart to 3, Snatch Steel to 3, and Zodiac Trident to 3. I don't think any of these hits matter. The Dragon Link deck does not get significantly better with Collapse Serpent and Wyverburster back to 3. I think they were at 2 before, and 2 versus 3 of these cards does not make a difference. The card that actually makes a difference is Chaos Space, which is still on the list. And it sucks that Dragon Link didn't get more off of this list because they're being focused on in Burst Protocol. This deck really feels like it should have gotten a lot more to work with in this with this ban list, I feel like. Dark Grepher, I didn't even know this was still on the list. I thought this card came off with Armageddon Knight because Armageddon Knight's just a better card. I don't know why this card is still on there. Very strange. Then there's Change of Heart and Snatch Steal, which are not bad cards. Like, these ones matter because I believe these were at 1 before. But they're also kind of mediocre board breakers in today's game. They're definitely fine to be at 3. They are good cards, and there might be a format where they are good, but I don't think these are like meaningful hits, and they don't bring any decks back, which is kind of my issue with it. None of these. Oh, and I guess I'll talk about Dryden. Dryden to 3 matters a little more, but like, it's not the difference maker for Zodiac, right? Zodiac has way too many problems to be competitive nowadays, and 3 Dryden does not make that happen. Anyway, yes, none of these unhits bring any decks back that weren't already playable. They just don't affect the meta at all, and it's not even the meta actually. It's not that they don't affect the meta; it's that they don't affect any decks really that matter. They could have brought back any of the Dragon Link cards and make Dragon Link a little better, which would have been cool for those players. They could have brought back like Electromite for Pendulum players. A little bit of bias, I know, but like still, it would have been nice to see something like that come back. I'm sure there's other stuff on the ban list that would have been cool to come back as well. And they just didn't bring anything interesting back, and that kind of sucks. It's nice when a ban list brings something cool and interesting back that people get to play with, right? So that sucks. It's not like a big negative on this ban list. It's more important what they hit rather than what they unhit. But I still would have liked to see something interesting come back. Now to the stuff that I think really matters, which is how they hit the top decks. And the three decks I want to talk about on how I don't like how they hit them is Malice, Canine, and Yummy. So we're gonna start with Malice. They banned Whitebinder. That's the only hit Malice got, but it is a really big hit. Whitebinder is the most powerful card in Malice. It is basically the card that sets up most of Malice's interaction, at least through the Malice cards. The reason I do not like this is because I think Malice, when it's doing Malice things, is a cool deck. Maybe people will kill me for saying that. I know a lot of people do not like this deck, but I think Malice is legitimately very cool and interesting and different from a lot of Cyber decks when it's doing Whitebinder stuff. Set the trap. If a Whitebinder sets the traps from deck, I think the traps are one of the most unique parts of Malice. It is the card that allows you to play on your opponent's turn, which is not something a lot of Cyber decks don't really do. It's a card that draws you cards, which is a big part of Malice's identity as well. Um, it just does so much for Malice's identity as a deck that I think banning it really removes a lot of the interest and cool things about Malice. And the worst part is I don't even think it makes Malice bad or unplayable. Red Ransom is the card that allows Malice to do all the things that people say they really don't like about Malice, which is the cyber slop stuff. Red Ransom is a card that effectively equals like 3 bodies on its own. Not even 3. It equals like 5 bodies worth of link material on its own. You have the Red Ransom summon, which gets you the field spell. The field spell gets you another body. When this card's banished, it gets you another body, and then it brings itself back. So you're getting so much value off of this single card in terms of both advantage and board presence, right? Which means you can just extend into infinity with this card, which is what the Cyber Slop wants to do. It just wants to slop all over the board, wants to throw as many extenders as it can onto the field, which sucks. I think that's the lamest part of Malice, is when it's just doing generic Cyber stuff. Um, with Whitebinder legal and Red Ransom banned, this deck would have been, I think, a little lower to the ground and a lot more interesting and fun to play for people who like Malice. I think if the ban list doesn't have to kill decks, it shouldn't. And I think leaving Whitebinder legal would have left Malice still playable. The thing is, I think it is still playable, even without Whitebinder. I think it's still a playable deck, but I think it's just infinitely less interesting now. I think this deck's just going to be the best cyber slop deck you can play, which sucks, because I think Malice as a deck could have been really interesting if they had left Whitebinder legal and banned Red Ransom. Cut down on its extender potential, like they've been doing, and leave its powerful enablers legal. Because I really think Malice is interesting when it gets to do its stuff. After that, I want to talk about Canine. I have a lot of issues with how they hit Canine. They limited Jokel and they limited Case, and that is the only hits to Canine. This is not enough, not even close. Here's the thing about Canine. Out of all 3 of the Just decks, I think Canine is the most toxic of the 3. The reason why is it's basically just doing what Malice does, if you really think about it. This deck's super hard to interact with. It extends like crazy, and it's worse than Malice in some regards because there's no locks on these cards. Or at least no reasonable locks. It's really hard. It puts up a way to stop hand traps, something Malice didn't do. That's super frustrating. So you can't even like nib this deck. And it beats more hand traps than Malice does. This deck plays better into Fua. It plays better into pretty much every hand trap. It doesn't care about Nibiru. It doesn't lose to like a silver bullet like Lancia. It's so much better. This is one of the strongest going first decks I think we've had maybe ever in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, this deck is so unbelievable when it gets to go first. And the hits didn't really change that. The only thing they changed is this deck now plays a little worse into Droll, because opening Jokel in your hand is how you usually beat Droll, is you go Jokel, summon a guy, and then get your plus off of Jokel, and then they would, like, Droll you, and it's like, okay, well, I've went, like, plus a million already, because I got the plus off of the monster I summoned that probably does something, and the search off of the Jokel, so who cares? Now that's a little harder to do. Naroi still plays pretty well in a Droll, and you can still just hard open the Jokel, so you still have like 4 cards in your deck that play well in a Droll. But also, Droll got hit on this list, so that doesn't matter. It's really frustrating. And the thing is, I think there was a really interesting and fair way to hit Canine that didn't kill the deck, despite what you may think, and that is ban Ripper. Ripper is the card that negates hand traps, it negates nib, it negates anything that would interact with anything of your opponent's, which is the most frustrating part about Canine. I do think it sucks that Canine loses its extender in Ripper, because I think as an extender, Ripper's really cool. But the negate effect on Ripper is just too much. It does too much. And it makes it to where any deck splashing the Canine engine just is so hard to interact with if they see their Canine cards. And if you want to see your Canine cards, you can, even with these hits. Chaotic Elements basically serves the same purpose as Case and Jokel did in those copies, because you can just play 3 Chaotic Elements, 1 Jokel, 1 Case, and you've still got 5 copies of Jokel in your deck. Um, I, I think they could have hit this deck in a really interesting ways. And the most frustrating part is they then brought back Inclusion to 3, Razen to 3, and Stake Your Soul to 3. These are the only unhits that matter, and they are not better for the positive, in my opinion. They did also one. Oh, I did forget to put a hit on this list. Holly Sue got put to 1. This matters for sure. Like Vanquish Soul, it means Vanquish Soul's worse going second, but a lot more consistent and better at going first with the 3 Razen and 3 Stake Your Soul. Um, so I think Vanquish Soul Canine overall got a buff on this ban list, which is crazy, I know, considering they got 3 cards limited. But I think the fact that they got these 2 back at 3 means the deck is genuinely better than it was before. And the thing is, you might think Canine just becomes unplayable if you ban Ripper. I really don't think that's the case. Canine still extends through a lot of stuff. The engine still can do a lot. Really, the only thing that would die is the pure Canine decks, which no one's playing. No one's playing pure Canine, so it doesn't really matter. Like, hitting that one deck to enable, in order to make the game overall significantly more fun for people by hitting all these really frustrating decks that just put up, because all the Canine decks put up insane boards. They all put up like 8 disruption boards at minimum or more. It's so frustrating. I really don't like the Canine decks. I think they are unbelievable going first and only okay going second unless you're Vanquish Soul Canine. But they lost Holly Suit at 3, which was one of their best going second tools. So even that deck is now super tailored for going first more than it is for going second, which sucks. I really don't like this deck. I really wish they had hit it in a way that made it fun, because I think all the Jush decks have potential to be fun. It's why I don't mind the Draco Tail hits. It's why I'm going to be mad about the next deck I'm going to talk about. And it's why I wish they had hit Canine in a way that made it really fun to play against. I think this engine being like a really cool extender engine that just lets you keep playing through interactions rather than just negating them outright would have been way more interesting than just having Ripper legal, and as soon as you make this card, the hand trap, one of your hand traps in your opponent's hand no longer matter, which means your opponent needs like 3 to 4 hand traps to stop this deck. And not even stop it, just to make it end on like a half board. And if they end on a half board and you've got 2 cards, you're probably losing. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Yummy hits. So Yummy got 2 hits on this list. Herald Ban, which is huge, and Yummy Snatchy Limit. So Herald Ban was pretty much guaranteed. Nobody expected this card to stay legal, which was fine. If they left this card, if they banned this card and did not limit Yummy Snatchy, Yummy still would have been the worst of the Jush decks, even with all the other hits. The Yummy just can't play against Draco Tail without Herald. So Yummy still would have been like the worst of the Jush decks, but it still would have been playable, right? Like the Yummy cards are still really good. If you compare it with an engine that like can play well in a Draco Tail, Yummy still could have been a really good, powerful deck, which would have been nice. But then they limited Snatchy, the most important card in Yummy. I don't know why they did this. Yummy is really fun. I think it's got really cool aesthetics that I think are very appealing to people looking from the outside in on this game. I think Yummy is absolutely the kind of deck that can pull people into the game. And then they limited Snatchy and made the deck unplayable. It's not like unplayable, but it's pretty bad now. A single Bestial ruins your day. A single Dracotail Sting means you probably lose the game. You just lose to any way to get rid of Snatchy, any way to banish Snatchy. Like, you just lose the game pretty much instantly. You need Snatchy to play. Multiple of your going first combos went through multiple Snatchy. Any line that needed Obedience Schooled after you were already playing needs multiple Snatchy. you need multiple Snatchy. Like, this card is so insanely important. I think the only Yummy version that isn't hurt too bad by this is Yummy Tri Brigade, and that might not even be true because I imagine you want multiple Snatchy for like summoning off of your Tri Brigade names. I don't know enough about that deck to say if I'm that confidently, but I feel like that's the only version of this deck that wasn't like murdered. It sucks because I think Yummy's a really cool, interesting deck. Without Herald, this deck is super fair. It plays, it's like a deck that plays through a ton of interaction, but is pretty easy to play into. It's a deck that you can gas through to not too difficultly. It's a deck that you can like. It's a deck that's just fun to play into. It's not super frustrating to interact with, other than like I guess with targeting effects, it's like annoying. But I feel like that's the cool thing about the deck, right? Is it gets to play so much on both turns. I like the deck a lot, and I think a lot of other people like the deck a lot. And the most frustrating thing about this hit is that Yummy was the most expensive of the Jush decks, or at least the most expensive core of the Jush decks, because of Marshmallow. Marshmallow being like a $50 card for most of its lifespan means that Yummy was like $200 at one point, which isn't a ton if you compare it to like 2024, but for the Jush decks, that was the most expensive, and that sucks that the people who spent money on Marshmallows now have an unplayable core. If they wanted to play Yummy as their deck of choice out of the Jush decks, because that was the whole format was revolving around the Jush decks, they just got hard punished for it. And they got even more punished by the fact that Mitsurugi also got hit. So if they were playing like Mitsurugi Yummy, too bad. You both of your engines just got hit. I could also see that making people not want to play the game anymore. I would be super pissed if the deck I picked up like a few months ago immediately gets hit on the next ban list and becomes terrible. Like that must suck so much for people. And I think the only reason they did this is because Yummy is the only deck that does not have a good high rarity card in Burst Protocol. They have that trap card that is fine, which is not going to see competitive play, which is why they didn't make it high rarity, which sucks. I think it sucks really hard that this deck got axed for entirely like greedy money reasons. Like that sucks. I think Yummy it sucks that the one of the Josh decks is just unplayable now. When all of the other two I feel like got one of them I think got better because of this list, and I think the other one got worse, but it's going to be insane post Burst Protocol. So I don't know, man. Like it just sucks to see. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the ban list. I just wanted to kind of yap about what I thought about the list. Um, tell me if you guys want more videos where I just like talk about the game. I think about the game a lot, so I would have a lot of opinions to just throw out there. Tell me what you guys thought about this style of video. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.